Somebody posted on one of my comment on one of my posts, like, I would like to be less angry. And I too would really like to be less angry. I would like to have so many fewer things to be angry about.
What's the timeline we can jump to where we have that?
Hey there, fellow nerds. Welcome back to another episode of The Present Illness, the podcast where two physicians try to make sense of a world that's a little febrile and overrun with foodborne disease. Currently, I'm Arghavan Salles, a surgeon scientist in your friendly neighborhood doom scroller in residence.
And I'm Alyssa Burgart, an anesthesiologist and bioethicist who tracks news and health law like their EKGs, full of spikes and surprises. And let me tell you, there have been a lot of spikes and surprises lately. The Present Illness is where we dig into public health, politics, culture, and ethics with a scalpel in one hand and a meme in the other. As a note to our listeners, we often talk about tough topics. They can be intense, activating, and they can be a lot. So if you need to take a break this week, we totally get it.
Indeed. We want to give a big thank you to everyone who's listening, wherever you found us, with some extra love to all our subscribers and followers on various platforms. We also want to extend a special warm welcome to anyone who just stumbled in from AOC's egg freezing announcement that has really made some waves this week.
Yes, that was so fascinating. And I thought of you, Arghavan, as soon as I saw it, because I feel like the way that you first came into like my social media ecosystem was when you wrote about freezing your eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's actually like some decent sized portion of people who know that I exist, because of that essay that I had written in Time. And it's been very interesting to watch. So for folks who don't know, AOC is in her late 30s, and she, obviously has been in Congress. She just started a cycle of egg freezing, I believe last Friday, like a week ago. And she's been documenting each day of her journey. And this has caused a lot of consternation on the internet. There are any number of reactions from, oh my goodness, this is just so uncouth. It's too personal. Why is she sharing this? To, she's so old. She should have already had babies. Why is she freezing her eggs? Why are women prioritizing their careers? Trad wife, that. And there's of course many people who are appreciating her talking openly about this. And as she's going through it, she's doing these vlogs where she's explaining like what the different medications are. She's explaining how the whole thing works. She's explaining the cost. She's having to pay out of pocket for it, as many people do, because it's so poorly covered by insurance in this country. So she's talking about class issues. She's really addressing a lot of the social issues that relate to egg freezing. But then, conservatives like Matt Walsh are all up in arms. How dare she do this? And at first when I saw it too, I was wondering because she had been engaged, to her longtime boyfriend. But she specifically was talking about egg freezing, not embryo freezing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out that actually, apparently, they broke up like a couple years ago, but she just like kept it kind of on the down low, I guess. Or at least I didn't know. I mean, I think a lot of people didn't know. So anyway, that's part of the issue, right? Is that for a lot of women who end up doing egg freezing is that they don't have a partner. And that was certainly one of my motivations. Was I was getting older. I was 38. I think she's either 37, 36, something like that. I forget exactly. Anyway, so I was 38 when I first tried to do that. And that was the reason. I hadn't found a person yet. I wanted to be able to have a baby with a person. And, I thought this would help me. She has actually specifically said that part of the reason she's doing this is so that she can take control. And I find that so interesting because my tweet when I posted my essay was actually, can women take control of our fertility? And the answer is not necessarily. And so I've been curious about whether she's going to address that. I'm also curious because she shared so much, what her outcome will be. And of course, I'm hoping for the best possible outcome for her. But there's also been a lot of conversation around does it make sense to freeze one's eggs? A lot of women who do freeze their eggs don't end up using those frozen eggs. So anyway, it's just been an interesting conversation unfolding. And what I can say for sure is that I think it's great that people are talking about it, whatever their opinions are, because I think a lot of women don't really know what it entails, don't know how much it costs, don't really think about it until it's very late. And AOC talks about how she had to save money for this. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very expensive procedure. And for her, it was like, am I saving toward buying a house or am I saving toward freezing my eggs?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the choice that she made.
Well, so,
So anyway.
and
Mhm.
yeah, well, the other thing that I thought was very interesting about this is there was a Congressional Research Service report in May of this year talking about infertility amongst military members,
Mm.
and a number of reports that have come out about military families being denied IVF coverage despite it receiving congressional attention. And then just one day ago, the Department of Defense has announced that they are going to start a pilot program for egg and sperm freezing for service members. And so I actually suspect that some of this may be in some way related to the fact that AOC is getting a lot of attention for addressing infertility, and the fact that like there are people, it turns out, in a lot of it's a bipartisan issue. Infertility
Mhm.
is not a partisan matter.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's interesting because this administration is also waxing and waning on IVF.
Hmm.
Some of the time we hear they want to outlaw IVF, and certainly there's some legislators in certain parts of the country that want to outlaw IVF. So that's interesting that they're doing. I mean, great. It's great that they're doing that for the military.
Well, IVF has been a longstanding bioethics issue because of its relationship to abortion. And there's so many, like, for example, the Catholic Church is in opposition to
Hmm.
fertility technologies because they say that it's, inconsistent. And so when every time the White House decides to say something about infertility and whether they care about it or they don't care about it, it seems to always be in trying to convince some element of their base to say, like us today.
Hmm.
Distraction, distraction, distraction.
That's
But this
right.
absolutely is absolutely connected to the abortion issues um, that we're facing in this country. So, anyway, I'll be curious to see what happens with AOC and what she continues to share.
Yeah. Likewise.
Well, um, let's get into our first topic. What do you? There's been so many things to choose from as every week.
I know. I feel like the healthcare news is really just like going nonstop
It's
lately.
it's been
Um,
brutal. I don't know if you've
yeah.
noticed this. I suspect you have, but like I feel like as a healthcare worker, and especially as those of us who like need to pay attention to health news, like not only for our jobs but for our own well-being, like it's been brutal.
Yes, it's been quite a lot. It's been overwhelming. Yeah, I think so. The two topics we're going to talk about today, one is going to be abortion, but we're going to start with the vaccine. All the vaccine misinformation, disinformation going around again, because on Monday of this week, we're recording on August 13th, which is a Thursday. On Monday of this week, the president had this big press conference to reveal his new executive order, which is called Delivering Gold Standard Childhood Vaccine Recommendations for Americans. Uh, we already had gold standard childhood vaccine recommendations. I mean, I
It's what
suppose
the ACIP has recommended is the gold standard.
yes, and what the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends. I mean, I don't know what they mean by gold standard, but to me, it's like the most proven, most evidence-based, scientifically sound schedule. We already have that. We already have it. We've had it for a long time.
But do you think that like when he talks about the gold standard, do you think he just thinks about like putting trashy things in the White House that are like painted gold?
That kind of gold standard. I mean, it's not just in the White House, mind you. He's like repainting statues all over DC in like 24 karat gold, spending
So stupid.
all our money on making things look worse. Anyway, that's a good question. Is that what he means by the gold standard? Like that it's tacky and gross and expensive? I don't know, perhaps. Um, so
Measles is going to
the
cost us millions of dollars.
well, it sure is, and lives and disability. Yeah, it's fantastic. That's the gold that he's talking about. So I want to talk about what's actually in this executive order, and then I want to talk about the disinformation that was put out at the press conference. Okay, so the actual executive order. What, you have a look on your face?
The look on my face is like I wanted to look at the I wanted to look at the EO while you talked about it. And when I went to the whitehouse.gov website, it has a pop-up No joke. It says, "Welcome to the golden age," with an exclamation point and a cutout of Trump like pointing. And then it's to collect your email address, but like just because we were just making fun of his love of things that are gold,
Gold. Yeah.
it was a little ironic and I couldn't control my face.
That's okay. That's okay. No need to. We're in a safe space. Okay, so this executive order, he talks about it's just so like you can see how someone who is not educated especially in health and science could think this is a good thing. Okay, so like he says that they have completed a quote unquote scientific assessment. Again, we already previously we've had decades of scientific assessment. But anyway, that they've done the scientific assessment and that they think that the US recommends too many vaccines. And it says specifically, quote, including more than twice as many vaccine doses as some European nations. And this I thought was just so funny. They put in parentheses scientific assessment. Like to prove that it's not your bullshit opinion, you put, I don't know, or like, was that left over? Was someone supposed to fill in a scientific assessment? I'm not really sure, but that's like there in the first paragraph of the executive order. So yeah, so they're saying things that they've said before, right? That there's too many vaccines. They also say that, we shouldn't be mandating, this I thought was interesting, that we shouldn't be mandating vaccines for children. So right now, right, certain vaccines are required for children to attend school because they affect the health of the other children.
But those are mandated by the states.
Yes, we're going to come back to that. But so they are mandated by the states, but he says we shouldn't do that. And that in fact, other countries don't do that because they, listen to this, because they instead use, quote, public trust and education, end quote. So I just want to pause there because he and his administration they've done everything they can to undermine public trust in science broadly and in vaccines specifically. And they're going to say I was just like, I don't understand how you can sit there and say that we should be doing is building trust and education. By the way, they've like dismantled the Department of Education. So that was interesting. Okay, so then keep going.
We just spent all of last week talking about how RFK is like the, liar in chief.
Yes.
On vaccines.
Correct. He goes on to say that basically they've tried to like do the right thing via the ACIP, as we talked about, Advisory Council on Immunization Practices, or is it committee? I always forget what the C is. But anyway, they tried doing it through ACIP and they tried doing it through federal regulations, but these pesky lawsuits are preventing them from doing what they need to do to save Americans or whatever. And that's because, so basically, RFK Jr.'s agenda has been, of course, to undermine trust and belief in vaccines. And he did try to do that, as we've talked about before, by replacing all the members of ACIP. And then a lawsuit was filed saying, actually, no, bro, you can't do that. And so everything that RFK Jr. has tried otherwise to change the childhood immunization schedule has failed. And so now they've gotten to this point, which is the president making this executive order. Now, what RFK Jr. has given him to get him to do this, I do not know. I would really love to know. I'm very curious about it. But that's why they're having to do this, because they've tried other things and it's all failed. They also talk about, quote unquote, maximizing parental choice, which is
it like choice maxing? Like, are there two X's?
I wish there were. But also, it's interesting because we're going to talk about abortion. Like, parents get choices, but pregnant people don't get choices, is kind of like the position of this administration. Also, but this idea, yes, exactly. This idea of like maximizing parental choice, it belies a fundamental misunderstanding of public health, right? The whole idea is not that, like, let's take a separate issue. Let's take driving under the influence. Is it bad for you personally to drive under the influence? Probably. Like, it increases your risk of getting into an accident. But that's not why it's illegal. It's illegal because of the harm it causes other people, or that exposes other people to. And it's a similar idea here, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, I could make a choice for my body, right? My body, my choice. But if I make a choice that endangers other people, then I don't have a right to enter all these shared spaces with other people, right? That's the whole idea behind these school vaccine mandates. And anyway, they want to like get rid of those. They're like, whatever, people should do whatever they want. And so the punchline here, not the punchline, but the summary is the things that they continue to recommend for whatever reason, based on their quote unquote scientific assessment, is that measles, mumps, rubella, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, Haemophilus influenza B, pneumococcus, HPV, and varicella. They put several of the vaccines that are currently recommended into a category that they call like for high risk or other groups. And this is RSV, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, meningococcal B, meningococcal ACWY, and then dengue. And then they also say some of these should have shared decision making. That list is very similar to the list that I just read you, and it includes also flu and COVID. So basically, they're cutting out quite a few of the vaccines that are currently recommended based on scientific evidence that suggests that children should be getting them. They say, quote, all childhood immunizations should be administered at separate medical visits. So that's another thing that, and I'll share a clip from the press conference in a moment about that.
So mad. It makes me so mad.
They're like, let's maximize the amount of time you have to, as a parent, take off work. Let's maximize the number of copays you have to pay. Let's maximize the number of shots that a child has to get where they're going to
maxing.
Well, it's interesting too, because like supposedly the idea is that they're trying to reduce the number of shots, but and I'll play this clip for you, but they are talking about, once again, we've talked about this before, they want measles, mumps, and rubella to all be separated. And so instead of right now, MMR is given together twice. So a child would get 2 injections to have coverage for those 3 diseases. They want to separate those out. So a child would then get 6 shots instead of 2. But all of this under the idea that they're minimizing the number of shots somehow.
And what this does, right? So like, for example, not only is MMR like a combined vaccine, which is great because exactly like you said, you get 1 visit, you get 1 shot, you get 3 protection from 3 major illnesses. For example, there's other vaccines where there's multiple put together. So like Pentavax, it has like whooping cough, diphtheria, it has hepatitis B, it has Haemophilus influenza, HIB. And so then you get protection from only 1 shot. And so it's so infuriating because, I mean, as an anesthesiologist, the amount of needle phobia that I see, because children, every time they go to the pediatrician, they're getting shots, which are to keep them safe. But they're also like, I would really rather that we focused on reducing the medical trauma of getting those shots.
Yeah.
Rather than saying like, oh, we're actually going to make it so that you need more injections and we're going to make it so inconvenient that you'll naturally become under-vaccinated because you're not going to go all those times to the freaking pediatrician's office and torture your kids.
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the big problems of separating everything out, is that's creating more barriers for people to get their kids vaccinated. So children will not get it's a greater likelihood that children will not get the vaccines that they need, and so they will not be protected, so they'll be more likely to get sick. And ultimately, that's part of RFK Jr.'s agenda, right? We've talked before about his eugenics. Like, he thinks that people who are weaker in his estimation should just be culled, essentially, right? And so if they can't get vaccinated, then when they get sick, if they die, well, it's because they weren't a person who was meant to live anyway. Obviously, I just want to be clear, that's disgusting, and that's not how either of us thinks about it. But that's his perspective, and that's part of the motivation here.
Well, and this is exactly the reason why when people talk about RFK, they talk about him being clearly a eugenicist, because he says it out loud. Like, he's always complaining about like, well, it's the sick kids that get sick. Like, shut up, you horrible person.
Yeah, he constantly says that. Like, the kids who died of measles, well, they were already sick. The adults who died of COVID, well, they were already sick. So sick people don't matter, right? And we shouldn't even bother trying to save them. I just want to highlight a couple other points about the executive order. So one is that back to your point about states, they specifically asked the states to update their laws and regulations. They also, this part was really frustrating to me. They essentially are asking for a repeat of decades of scientific studies on vaccines to assess everything related to vaccines. what schedule should they be given on, what additives should be in them, how many doses, like everything that we have already established over decades, they somehow want to restudy. And that made me really angry because
yeah,
as a taxpayer, as someone whose NIH funding was pulled, like, why is money being spent this way? We have a lot of problems that have not been solved, and we are not putting our money into those because instead we're paying for a war that nobody asked for. And we're going to now spend who knows how much money re-demonstrating everything we've already demonstrated. Like, we could be developing new cancer treatments, and instead we're going to be like reassessing whether MMR can be given altogether instead of in separate. I mean, like, this is really nuts.
Well, and like we already have some vaccines that we know prevent cancer, and then they're discouraging people from getting those. So it's like they want this approach to vaccine is going to make people more sick, not just as children, but long term in their lives. It's bad for public health. It's bad for individual health, and it just as I was thinking when I was listening to Trump talk about how they wanted to separate out all the vaccines and blah, blah, blah. I was thinking of the Informed Consent Action Network, which is one of the major anti-vaccine proponent organizations. They work very closely with Children's Health Defense Network, which is, I forget if I'm saying that one right. That's RFK's baby. And the ICON group put out this like 2017 white paper that basically splits out all the vaccines. And they're like, well, in 1986, people only got a couple of vaccines. And now, whoa, so many vaccines. And they list out every single vaccine, even if they're provided in a combination. They list out every single flu vaccine for 18 years.
Yeah, I was going to talk about this when we get to the press conference, but they have this graphic that they've circulated before, and they're circulating again, that shows two little babies. It's a drawing of a baby. One of them is supposedly in Europe, and the other one is in the U.S. And I forget, I have it somewhere on my phone. But the European baby gets like some smaller number of injections, and they have little syringes all the way around the baby.
Yes.
And then the American baby has 72 syringes surrounding the baby, and they're really fear-mongering, saying like, this is way too many injections. A lot of people are having trouble figuring out how they get to 72. I think it's by doing exactly what you're talking about. So they're taking like MMR, which is one injection for 3 diseases, and they're acting like that's 3 shots. And then again, at the second dose, 3 more shots. And they're also counting every year a flu shot and every year a COVID shot up to age 18. So the point is, and they're including the HPV that's given later, like they're counting every injection up to age 18, but putting it on this picture of a baby. And they're also counting in like ghost injections, right? Where there isn't actually an additional injection.
Oh, by the way, they also count injections in pregnancy.
And they count like oral.
It's so
like
stupid.
RSV, I think, is oral. So they're doing all this weird stuff that's not, they're lying. And then they're saying, oh my God, these babies are getting 72 injections. The last thing I want to say about the EO itself before I go to the press conference is that, because a lot of people have said, but this is just an executive order. It's not a law. It's not legally binding. And we have seen how this administration has manipulated the population via executive orders. One very obvious example for both of us is the way that DEI has been handled. So there is no law that says DEI is illegal, but there are 2 executive orders that say DEI without even defining what it is, that it is illegal. And we've seen universities all over the country just cave and say, okay, we're not doing that anymore. Websites are gone, programs are gone, positions have been eliminated, people have been laid off. And for what? Like, again, it's not legally binding, but because one, they did the executive order, then they started suing. Well, they started investigating and then also suing different universities. That was enough. And so they have this in the executive order. They say the attorney general will take action against states that basically don't do what they want, but specifically are they're talking about quote unquote medical exemptions. So they say that they are going to go after states that don't let people opt out, essentially, of these vaccines. So, which is, obviously terrible for public health. But
well, yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I have two clips from the
You're gonna
press
make us.
conference that
You're gonna make us
I
listen to
think we
his
should listen to.
voice.
They're short.
Okay.
I will say that another thing, though, that's interesting is the executive order doesn't say anything about autism.
Oh.
But that was definitely brought up in the press conference
Yeah.
as like an issue that they're continuing supposedly to be concerned about. When again, as we've discussed at length before, this has been like the question of are vaccines and autism related has been studied ad nauseum, and the answer is no, they are not. And so they're just again bringing that up for no good reason aside from again pushing RFK Jr.'s agenda. Also, Trump said basically another lie about the incidence of autism. He said that 20 years ago it was 1 in 10,000 people who got diagnosed with autism, but it was actually 1 in 110. So he's trying to make it like exaggerate this idea that, oh my God, like it's this exploding epidemic and it must have to do with vaccines, which it clearly does not.
Does he
Okay,
ever open his mouth and not lie, though?
I have not seen that.
Okay.
I will
Just
report
checking.
back if I do. I think it would be a day to remember. So he goes on to talk about, like we were mentioning, that this idea of like separating the MMR. I do want people to hear exactly what he says is the reason supposedly for doing this, because I mean, like one of the things that bothers me or that I find like interesting, I guess, is how people will listen to the stuff that he says, like what I'm about to play for you, and think that it's plausible, even though just like, even if you know nothing about science, it's totally not plausible. Like, okay, let me just play this and then we can talk about it.
Evidence of that? Because anyone in what I've heard is that there's some people that say it is that way, and I say, well, let's say there's a 5% chance of it. Let's split it up. Let's split it up because they do say that given individual MMO, that given individual, there is no impact. In fact, they've said how safe it seems to be. But I've heard when you put them together, they can be explosive. Yeah.
Explosive. This is what I mean. Like, how do you listen to that and think, I have not heard news reports of children exploding from MMR over the past 50 years. How is that possible? Or being lethal? Like, if children were dying from the MMR vaccine.
Can you imagine if 5% of children were dying?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Are you bananas? I mean, he is bananas, but anyway.
He is bananas. But this is what I know I'm thinking too, like rationally, but to me, even if you know nothing about science, if you hear that, would you not pause and go, I haven't seen any headlines about children exploding in the last 50 years. I haven't seen headlines about large numbers of children dying from this vaccine. What is he talking about? Like that would be my reaction if I didn't already know the answer. But clearly that's not what's happening. So this is what he's using as the justification for the need to go from 2 shots to 6 to cover these 3 conditions. And it's worth noting that they're not available separately. That's not a thing that exists because no pharmaceutical company envisioned that we'd have such an anti-science administration someday that this would be the thing that they want. So it actually says in the executive order, like whenever possible, when these things become available, this is what should be happening.
Well, so but what this also makes me think about is when Vinay Prasad at the end of 2025 put out that claim through the FDA claiming that COVID vaccination was associated with 10 children dying. Yeah. And what do you know? There was no evidence for it.
No evidence.
No evidence.
Yep.
No evidence.
Could not be found. I know.
Could not. People looked hard.
Yeah. Could not be found. And the FDA had to admit it, if I recall, that was not true.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that about the MMR, but I think you're going to like this other clip as well. So, same press conference, same cast and crew, same day. Here he goes.
1 year, you should have 5 separate visits for vaccines rather than getting them all in the same day. And I saw this early on, and I've seen proof of it, where they have a vaccination that looks like the size of a bottle of soda poured into a little child's body, and bad things happen in many cases. There's an explosion. This is an epidemic.
a soda bottle's worth of vaccines. I just want to like put that in perspective for folks. So like a soda bottle, like if you go to a convenience store, it'll be 20 ounces. That's hundreds of milliliters. Okay. That's a huge volume.
But you know what's like the most bananas also is like as an anesthesiologist, when I'm like consenting families around blood transfusions and like, stuff like that, like I literally will calculate like their baby, how many cans of soda of blood is in their child, but like to help people visualize, like it's not very much.
Yeah.
And the idea that infants are getting like soda bottles of vaccination, like, and also, by the way, this man has children.
Well, somewhere in this press conference, I don't have this clip, but he does say that he like took his kids to get vaccinated, which I 100% do not believe.
One person believes that.
Yeah. And he says like this thing about the soda bottle again, which already tells you that he's lying about the other thing. But just, for the sake of science, there have been folks who have gone through and calculated like what is the actual volume. And Dr. Nicole Baldwin is a pediatrician. So she did this and she actually had a syringe and she had, water and she was pulling up and she had the, vaccine schedule. And she's like, okay, so for the MMR, here's the 0.5 ml at this stage. And so she walks through the whole thing. The total volume, including every year flu and COVID vaccines, was 31 milliliters. So not even 100, which is like one fraction of the volume that he's suggesting that babies are getting. I mean, again, he was not talking about throughout their childhood up to age 18. He was talking about like toddlers. And anyway, so
this guy's a ding dong.
Really cool. He is just definitely a ding dong.
He's a ding dong. And again, the clown car of public health rides again.
It rides every day. It's riding hard. Anyway, so yeah, that's the basic gist of it. I think the upshot, like what does this all mean? I think they're creating a lot of confusion for folks. I think there are families that will not get their children vaccinated because they're hearing all this stuff and they may opt out of the ones that the Tweedledee and Tweedledum said should not be or should be optional, right? They should be for high-risk kids when in fact, the data suggests that they should be for all kids. If they ever do make the separate shots like the M and measles, mumps, and rubella separate shots, first of all, it's going to be a huge amount of money to develop those shots and then test those shots. It's going to be years before they would be available. But if we get to that point, as you said, that will leave children unprotected because they will not be able to the parents won't be able to keep bringing them back for shot after shot after shot.
Although this will be just like more fuel for the like women shouldn't have jobs because they're going to need to be at the pediatricians literally every week.
That's right.
With their million babies.
Yeah, for each baby, right? You have to do this. So I think obviously it's just another way of undermining the public's confidence in science and to decrease the number of people who get vaccinated. I mean, I have currently people in my comments yelling at me about how like it's their own choice what they do with their kids. What's it to me? And I tried to explain we've talked before about the child in California who died from a late complication of measles, having caught measles before he was old enough to get vaccinated. And we've talked about immunocompromised people who are on chemotherapy, et cetera. Like, a lot of people rely on everyone else getting vaccinated. And this person was like, that's funny. You think an anecdote about one child is going to change my mind or what? I was like, but it wasn't one child. I mean, so it's disturbing to me that people have become, or that we've normalized selfishness to such a degree that people will try, rationalize for themselves that it's okay to endanger other people, not just their child, but other people as well, and that they have a right to do that.
And unfortunately, because of, how supercharged this rhetoric is, how it has the voice of the highest people in government, I think that we will have generations of people who unfortunately will get to see the result of these choices.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be terrible.
I do want to say one more thing that's related. I know I've talked for a while, but Bill Cassidy, who is responsible in many ways for confirming RFK Jr., he did an interview and somebody asked him, basically, do you regret having voted for this guy? This piece of shit said, well, that's like asking me if I could tell the future. How could I have known? I mean, he told me that he was going to, he made me these promises. How could I have known that he was lying? If you're asking me this question, you might as well be asking me, Bill, why couldn't you see the future? And I was like,
Bill, did you look at the past?
We all saw it. We all saw it. We're not paid to see it. We have no power. We have no influence. We all saw it. And we told you. We told you.
We didn't need to look into the future because we had so much evidence from the past.
Yeah.
That we were like, wow, this person, RFK, has shown us again and again and again for decades what he thinks. And you believed his lies. I guess I just, what a coward. What a coward.
Absolutely. He cannot come to grips with his own decision making. Like Monday after this press conference was posting about how terrible this is, how life-saving vaccines are. But I was like, bro, you're not going to post your way out of this.
Well, and
you already need to take responsibility.
He already lost his reelection. Like, why not be honest now and be like, I got duped?
Because I don't think he can. I don't know. Here's my take.
I don't know him.
No, I don't either, obviously. But I think that he has convinced himself that what he did was the right thing. Because that's how he maintains his sense of self, right? He can say, well, I was told he wasn't going to do this, and I made my decision based on that. So it's not my fault that I got bamboozled. It's not my fault that I wasn't smart enough to understand that a best predictor of a person's future behavior is their past behavior. It's not my fault that I looked a liar in the face and believed what he told me. How could I have known? Like, I think that's how he's justifying it to himself because he's seeing this and it clearly is upsetting to him, all the changes that are being made. He probably personally feels betrayed because he did get these promises that like the childhood immunization schedule wouldn't be changed. And this is his way of like coping with it. It's childish. It's immature. And then he went and confirmed Todd Blanche, which is, going to run into our next topic when he's already lost his position. He doesn't owe anyone anything at this point. And he still went ahead and confirmed yet another terrible, terrible person.
Bill Cassidy, you're a coward. I'm really disappointed in you as a fellow physician. You really screwed the children of America. Thanks for nothing.
I wish you no peace in retirement, sir. Anyway.
I wish him nothing but long hours to reflect upon his choices and what happened.
I hope many, many people write him letters to tell him how they feel about his decision making. Anyway, that's pretty much like this week in anti-science. That's what's been going on.
I swear I'm going to develop hypertension, like with all these, it's like every time there's a news story, I'm like, I just...
Yes. Somebody posted on commented on one of my posts, like, I would like to be less angry. And I too would really like to be less angry. I would like to have so many fewer things to be angry about.
What's the timeline we can jump to where we have that?
I was actually thinking about this. I think at the very least, I was thinking in the past, like if I could change one thing about the past, like a sliding doors type thing, to change what's happening now. I think initially I said 2016 and then I thought about the election and then I thought about it and I was like, no, the 2000 election, if Gore had become president, at the very least, I feel like we would have taken some action on the climate crisis. At the very least.
Well, the other thing, too, about the 2000 election is Bush is the person who confirmed multiple Supreme Court justices, including John Roberts, and making him the Chief Justice, as well as Samuel Alito. Like, I don't think that we would have Citizens United if it hadn't been for that election. Well, on that cheery note, should we talk about abortion?
Yeah. I'd love an uplifting topic.
Well,
tell me. What's on your mind?
I would say the uplifting thing is that, Massachusetts just recently signed, their governor expanded abortion access past 24 weeks, which is a huge deal. There's only 10 states that have that. So that's a positive.
Yeah.
On the downside, though, and there are a number of downsides.
Yeah.
Um, well, so first of all, Pregnancy Justice just recently put out another report on an update on criminalization. And
Mhm.
so, for example, there have been, I think, in the last uh, so the last time they had a report was in 2023 to 2024. And there had been 3 patients who had been prosecuted for having abortions. And then in the 2026 report, that's up to 14, which is an
Mm.
over 350% increase in the
Mhm.
number of cases where patients were prosecuted for having abortions. And there's a bunch of other issues. There have been 730 laws related to fetal personhood. Now, a lot of those endanger pregnant people, and some of those protect pregnant people. But the legal landscape is a hot ass mess, I'll tell you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but the thing that I wanted to address, you talked about Todd Blanche. We're going to talk about him a little bit more as well. And when we touched previously on the show about Erica Schwartz being confirmed as the new CDC director. Susan Monterez was only in that role for a very short period of time, but because of her steadfastness on vaccine science, was promptly removed from office. And then they, tried to put in Casey Means, who we talked about previously, and her nomination was unsuccessful. They withdrew the nomination, and Erica Schwartz was next. Well, during Erica Schwartz's confirmation hearing, she was being interviewed by or questioned by Josh Hawley, who is, really an anti-abortion extremist, who was on a Republican, who was on the committee, who was the nominating committee. And she said to him that abortion surveillance would be a critical component of her work with the CDC. And now there is some scientific surveillance data that is collected by the CDC, but it's a mix of voluntary data. And the concern is that she is going to allow, promote, and perhaps focus on involuntary data collection related to pregnancy. And when you think about that in the light of all of these fetal personhood laws, you think about the constant assaults on abortion access, you think about the increase in criminalization, the government collecting involuntary abortion data. I, for one, do not trust this government to use that in a way that benefits patients, that benefits pregnant people. I think that this will be used as a tool of oppression, as many other things seem to be used for. Um, and so,
I
for
mean,
example,
we are in an increasingly surveillance state across any topic, any part of society, anything that you want to think about. So
well, and like health surveillance, like the word surveillance in public health is not inherently bad, but this kind of surveillance sure sounds bad. This doesn't sound like tracking something with the effort of making sure that people have the best outcomes. Pregnant women in this country have abysmal outcomes, which are far, far worse, especially for Black women who have 3 times worse mortality, Black infants who have higher mortality. We are not providing excellent care in this country to people who are pregnant. And so the idea that the biggest problem is that we need to hone in on people who are having abortions and then criminalize them for having abortions is deeply troubling. And so I am very concerned about that statement. And I know that, Todd Blanche, when in his confirmation hearing, he did not talk about this issue, but there was audio that was leaked. And I know you've got a clip to share of
yeah,
him talking with um, the White House Faith Office, and then got posted online by a Christian organization called Intercessors for America. And boy, howdy, the claim with the Dobbs decision was that was going to really kick back decisions about abortion access to the
right.
states. So, audience members, take a listen to this.
Be ready. He's going to knock your socks off.
Hand in hand with HHS and the FDA and the White House and President Trump's team to get permanent solutions so that the Dobbs decision becomes permanent in every single state. So that means that if states are allowing, if states have said we are going to protect the unborn and we're going to protect every life from the moment of conception,
we're putting practices and policies in place so that other states and other organizations can't attack that, and they can't, do things like they're doing with mailing in mail order drugs and things like that. And it's a process that takes a lot of time, and that's why it's been 19 months and we don't have complete victory yet. But we will have victory, and victory will be soon, and it will be permanent. And that's an important thing to everyone.
Tonight is victory. Like this
Gross.
is a war on pregnant people, and they're going to have complete victory soon, and they're so concerned about fetuses, right? It's the whole pro-life issue, and not concerned about the pregnant people. Um,
I mean, how
it's
many women have to die from pregnancy complications for things to
more,
change? Clearly
more,
not. Clearly more and more and more.
more and more and more.
And then hide the data.
Exactly. Disband all the maternal mortality committees and it'll be fine. Like Trump has said many times for many different things, if we just stop measuring it, right? Cyclosporiasis, let's just stop counting the number of cases.
Measure abortion, don't measure pregnant women's deaths.
Yeah, exactly. We got to stay focused on what really matters here. And I think, this has a parallel to the vaccine conversation, right? Where how come these people who have made all these arguments about let states do whatever they want are so hell-bent on making federal policies that will force states to do unsafe, inappropriate things that are violations of our privacy and our ability to seek and obtain healthcare. I mean, back to your point about surveillance, I don't know if you saw this story, but I mean, flock cameras, maybe we should do a whole episode about flock cameras,
Oh
but
my gosh, yes.
there was a woman in Texas who, authorities thought had an abortion, and they tracked or searched 83,000 automatic license plate reader cameras trying to find her, including in other states, in case she had left the state.
Well, and I actually think that we talked about this case very briefly when it happened, when it first was released. But after that, they had claimed, oh no, it was a welfare check. But then all of this data came out showing that, no, they tried to hunt this woman down for having an abortion.
Mm-hmm. And so, between that and the period trackers and the administration's repeated attempts to access health records for various reasons, most related to gender affirming care, they are trying in many different insidious and malicious ways to enforce policies that shouldn't even exist in the first place, or even they're not necessarily policies, but they're their personal preferences, right? That's what all the executive orders are. It's, somebody's whim that Trump decides to go along with. I don't think he's coming up with these. I don't think he even cares about most of them. He's just like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that for you. I don't know what he gets back. I'm sure there's some kind of deal making going on there. But that's what they're doing. I mean, and it's really blatant. They're not hiding it. Do you know what I mean? They're being very clear. We're going to take away these rights. We're going to take away these freedoms. We're going to make you do what we want you to do, whether it's vaccines or it's abortion or it's gender affirming care or whatever else. You will do what we want you to do, and you're going to like it while we rake in the money. That's the basic premise of this administration, as far as I can tell.
I dislike it. I dislike it. I don't like it.
You dislike it. Yeah, I also dislike it severely.
The other thing that you and I were talking about before is that this case of Ashley Brown. Did you want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, sure. So this is a woman who, she seems, I don't know how old she is, but she appears young, I would guess in her 20s. But as I get older, my ability to discern age becomes less accurate. Anyway, she has been posting on social media for the last maybe 4 to 6 weeks or so.
Yeah.
About her experience. She was pregnant and had an early miscarriage, basically. Although not she had early fetal demise, I should say that. So the heart rate went away and the fetus stopped growing somewhere around 5 weeks. And that's already a devastating outcome. And she lives in South Carolina, where they would not offer her a DNC, which is the treatment for that to evacuate the remains. And they wouldn't do that because of, the laws in South Carolina. What she was told was that they needed to have repeated ultrasounds to document again that there still was no heartbeat. And that is already traumatizing, right, for someone who is going through this. And now they have to not only worry about and think about the loss of that pregnancy, but also the risk to them for having those remains inside them still, because that's a risk for sepsis.
And also, I think, like, not for nothing, this is not the kind of ultrasound where they put it on your tummy.
Oh, yeah.
This is a transvaginal ultrasound. It is
Right.
a wand that is up in your vagina, up against your cervix to look at your fetus.
Yeah. And so make people have multiple of those. I mean, yeah, I agree. It's not nothing. And so somewhere in there, she had traveled to Florida, which is another state that also does not really help people in these situations because of the way their laws are written. So at some point, she had had three separate ultrasounds documenting that the growth of the fetus was still stuck at 5 weeks. There was no heartbeat. It was very clear what was happening. But they said that they would need to document one more time. And so she ends up, this is, my understanding of her story is she ends up basically having to go pay out of pocket for an abortion because that was the only way that someone would provide the care that she needed. Um, and then, and she made that decision because she was really worried about her own health deteriorating the longer that this fetus remained, in there. Like, I mean, that's not, it's not good for a person to have um, a fetus that's already passed. Like, that's a real risk to her
That
health. And
tissue, if
she,
it's not getting rid of itself, it's got to get out somehow or you will get sick.
yeah. And so at some point, she made the choice that she was going to just call it an abortion and pay for it and move on with her life. But she was put through multiple exams, weeks of waiting, having to grieve this loss while also being really scared about what was going to happen to her. And that's one example of the consequence of these laws that are in states where legislators are saying they are, quote unquote, pro life. But here you have like a living person whose life you're endangering with your policies. And time and again, these legislators have refused, at all different levels, have refused to put in place any sort of logical regulation that would even make exceptions for situations like this. And their argument has been that the law already allows physicians and healthcare workers to provide the necessary care in these cases. But the lawyers at all these clinics and hospitals are saying, nope, nope, we cannot. Based on the way this is written, we can't do it. We need to put this person through more torture in order to make sure that the state is not going to come after us because the fines are heavy and physicians and healthcare workers can be thrown in prison, for example, in Texas. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're seeing more and more of is those stories. And people who need or want an abortion, they also should have a right to get an abortion when they want.
Yeah.
And there are cases like this where someone needs to have a DNC for their own health and safety and aren't able to get it. And that's why we've seen such a rise in the number of people dying in a lot of these states because they basically can't access healthcare. I mean, abortion is healthcare and they can't access it.
Yeah. So I'm very concerned about the CDC deciding that they're going to, well, specifically Erica Short stating that that's what she's going to focus on. I
Mhm.
think it's going to be a huge problem. And it's just a further problems at the highest levels of health in this country of focusing on the wrong thing and penalizing people based on a narrow portion of the population's religious beliefs.
Yep. And projecting those onto everyone else.
Yep. Did you want to take us through a quick tour of some things we didn't have time to talk about this week?
All right. So there's always so many things going on. And I am, as the two of us were discussing earlier, way too online. But here are a few things that just people should have on their radar. So one is we continue to see, as we saw last week, the relitigation of everything that happened in 2020 and 2021. More personal private information about Dr. Fauci has been released, including some text messages.
The diaries.
Yes, the diaries. Now it's the text messages. And one that people are really reading a lot into is a text where he talks about, this is in January of 2021, where he talks about the theoretical risk that that pregnant people might be exposed to if they took the vaccine. And again, this is, before, if people can think back to that time, the vaccine had only become available to healthcare workers in December of 2020. So this is January 2021. It was certainly not widely available. It certainly was not being recommended for pregnant people at that time. And he was in conversation with the CDC director and the Surgeon General about, like, what do we know about this for pregnant people? And so he mentions that because some people had a very intense reaction to the second dose of the vaccine, might that inflammatory response pose a theoretical risk to, in particular, first trimester pregnancies. And, to me, sitting there reading it, I'm thinking, he's being thoughtful. He's looking ahead. He's being cautious. That's great. That's what you want.
They didn't have the information yet. There was a real call. And by the way, at that time, which I'm sure you remember, there were a number of pregnant patients who were dying of COVID, who were hospitalized, who were being placed on ECMO. We weren't sure if those fetuses were going to survive to be born. It was very stressful, and it was a very important question that needed the due diligence of science.
Yeah, and those pregnant people that you're talking about, just again, to be crystal clear for everyone, those are before people who got COVID, before there was a vaccine. The disease itself has a negative impact on pregnancy that has now been documented repeatedly. And so the question is not, like, as somebody else framed it, the question was not, should pregnant people get the vaccine or nothing? It was like the vaccine versus getting that illness. That was the reasonable comparison. Anyway, people have made a big deal about this, saying that he knew. So this is what people have said, that he knew there was a problem with giving it to pregnant people and he didn't say anything about it publicly. But obviously that's nonsense. First of all, he didn't know. He was expressing a potential concern that didn't bear out in the data once more data were obtained. And what would be the purpose of just sharing every potential concern we all have? Imagine the amount of panic that would have ensued if every thought that Dr. Fauci had, he had been writing a press release of, here are some things I think might happen. Let's all worry ourselves to death over them. Do you know what I mean? That's not a strategy. That's not a public health communication. That's not a science communication strategy that makes any kind of sense. But, of course, people are just dead set on villainizing this poor man who just gave his life to public health. So anyway, that's one of the ways that I think we're going to continue to see, for whatever reason, more conversations about what happened in 2020 and 2021, a period of time that we were alive for, that we were adults for, that we were cognizant for. And I guess I should mention, just for the sake of thoroughness on this point, that related to this idea of pregnancy and vaccines, one of the talking points that was very viral in 2021 was there was a New England Journal paper that came out in April of 2021 looking at outcomes for pregnant people with the vaccine. And that found that the miscarriage rate was about 12.5%, which is very much in line with the miscarriage rate in the population even before SARS-CoV-2 ever existed. But some malicious people took those data, took a numerator with an inappropriate denominator, and decided that actually the rate of miscarriage was 82%. It's not 82%. And this is another example of if 4 out of 5 pregnant people who got vaccinated had a miscarriage, this would have been a major news story. It would have been everywhere. And we would no longer be offering that vaccine to pregnant people. We were, again, alive, cognizant adults at that time. That is not what happened. We never saw those stories. And now, for whatever reason, people like Ted Cruz and other right-wing people, legislators, pundits, everything, they're just still propelling that lie, even though it has been debunked over and over and over again. People have demonstrated, why it's wrong. Anyway, you're right. We can move on. Bottom line, it's not true. That's all I'm saying. That's not true. I made a video about it. If people want to watch it, I explain it. And then, okay, next, I got to get faster at these. Okay, the trans panic. We've talked a lot about the right-wing agenda to attack and really try to eliminate trans people in many different ways. And now it's taken this very strange turn in that there's two former NBA basketball players who have declared that they're going to enter the WNBA draft.
I saw this.
It's so ridiculous.
How dumb
One
are
of
they?
them doesn't even bother to say that he identifies as a woman. He just says, we check the rules and I'm eligible. The other one, so that guy's name is Enes Kanter Freedom. The other guy is a guy named Royce White, who scored 0 points, also had 0 assists, and also had 0 rebounds in his illustrious NBA career. And he said that he sometimes identifies as a woman for the purpose of basketball. Like, they could not, either of them, even commit to the bit. They could not say, I am a woman, I should be allowed to play in the NBA. They couldn't even say that in the WNBA.
It's just these people.
Yes. And so what they're doing is they're trying to force the WNBA. So just so folks know, the eligibility criteria for a WNBA are that you have to be a woman. That's all it says. There's no codification.
I mean,
of
it sounds
that.
like they're trying to push them towards this SRY bullshit testing that
they're
the
trying to
Olympics
push them
are
towards
doing.
something. I'm not even sure they have a clear outcome that they're looking for. Royce White said he wants them.
Two basketball players did not come up with this idea on their own.
Well, I think that's probably true. It's worth noting that Royce White is also running for Senate. This is his third attempt at running for public office. He has not been successful the other 2 times. So it could very well be for him, like part of his way of getting attention for his campaign.
Well, it worked.
But basically, he said that what he wants is for the WNBA to, protect women and come out and make a clear statement that men are not allowed in the WNBA. And they asked him, what happens if you don't get drafted? And he said, well, then I would have to sue because that's discrimination. Anyway, so it's absurd. The WNBA, I think, what is really, there's many things upsetting about it, but one of them is that the WNBA is a women's basketball league that has finally, in the last couple of years, started to gain in popularity, gain in traction. The players have finally been successful at negotiating for a little bit more compensation. It is a league that is, in many ways, thriving. And instead of us having conversations about records that are being broken and talented players, we're sitting here talking about these 2 bozos who want to talk about supposedly protecting women in sports. By the way, I should mention, I know I'm so bad at being concise. So Royce White has a 50-year restraining order from his ex-wife. He cannot be within a quarter mile of her for 50 years. He cannot be within a quarter mile of his son for 2 years. And this is the person who's talking about protecting women in sports. It's fucking absurd. And I made a whole video about it. People can watch it. I'll put a link.
That's a twist.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's the guy protecting women.
And this is the thing, right? Is like anytime that you hear somebody saying some anti-trans bullshit and they claim it's to protect women, they are lying. That's bullshit. This doesn't protect anybody. All this does is hurt trans people and make it less safe for trans people to be out in the world.
I agree. Okay, very quickly, a war-related news story. We haven't talked about the war in Iran in a minute. It's not going to be a long one. There's a ship that there are American soldiers on, the USS Abraham Lincoln. Apparently, the conditions on the ship are so terrible that, unfortunately, multiple people have tried to jump off of the ship. They are not able to have access to reliable access to food, apparently. They're not getting their mail delivered. There's all sorts of things that sound really terrible and not what you want in terms of, Pete Hegseth's always talking about the readiness of troops and like, we're going to test people for testosterone levels, but like, can we start with feeding people? Can we start with these people have been on the ship longer than anyone's supposed to be on a ship and they won't let them go to a port? Yeah, it's
Where
really,
are they?
I do not know. This was a quick hit. This was not a detail.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I don't know actually, but I just know that they have requested going to port multiple times and have been denied. And there are these.
I just looked it up. This is the The Lincoln has been supporting the U.S. war in Iran, and its deployment has included a record-setting, uninterrupted time at sea of more than 260 days.
Yep. Under terrible conditions. From what the troops are saying to their family members, like there are screenshots of text messages and stuff floating around out there. This is not a ready military. This is not a military that's treating its troops well. Am I surprised with like the narcissist in chief as the Secretary of Defense? No. But my heart goes out to these folks who are, signed up for the military to serve their country and are being treated, it sounds like, kind of like the people in ICE detention centers. I mean, it's bad. It's really bad. And I hope that they're able to get food. I hope that they're able to get to port. Like nobody deserves to live in those conditions. Okay, the last super quick story is that folks may recall that the federal government was suing Harvard as it has threatened to do with multiple universities, saying that they were anti-Semitic, and the case was dismissed.
Finally.
I think that's really important for folks in higher ed. I wish that every university president gave a hoot and said, if we fight these guys, maybe we win. Instead of, ooh, let's not fight these guys. That's too hard. Let's just stop doing science and stop doing DEI and stop doing anything that matters that makes us higher ed in the first place. But anyway, good for Harvard. I'm not saying they're perfect. They have their flaws like everywhere else, but I think it's great that they said, no, we're not going to just give in to your desire to control our university. And they made it far enough that a judge said, yeah, this is nonsense.
Great. Congrats.
Yeah.
Well, per usual, that was a lot. So let's take two and call me in the morning. Arghavan,
Yes.
What is bringing you joy amidst all the noise?
Okay, have you seen this guy and his son on their bicycle?
No.
Okay, it's so cute. There's this guy who has a toddler, I believe, and they will go on bike rides where there's like a little toddler bike seat in front of the dad, and he records, and like the kid's like, "Oh, daddy, what's that? Oh, daddy, what's that?"
Oh, I have seen something of this.
Okay, so there was a video. I first became aware of them when there was this video where the dad is like, having this interaction with the kid, and the kid goes, "Daddy, I want a baby bicycle." And he's like, "Oh no. Like that's the end of this era. Like I won't be riding with my son this way anymore." And the thing is, the internet was not having it. The internet was like, "No. All the baby bicycle factories have exploded. There are no baby bicycles. They don't have them. You're going to have to tell the kid that it's just not possible." And it really like got more exaggerated when the dad filmed removing the bicycle seat, the little toddler bicycle seat from his bike. And people were like, "I don't know what you think you're doing. You need to put that seat back. That kid is not getting his own bike for at least another 10 years. And so, yeah, all the internet aunties and uncles are like, "No, we will not stand for this." It's not allowed.
Goodness. So cute. My kids,
really I'll put one of those in the
my husband used to ride around with our kids in I think the company is called Burley. It's like a little wagon basically that's behind the bicycle. And so he used to take them back and forth to like, daycare and stuff. And then when the kids didn't want to be in that anymore, he attached this little extension behind the bike that our kids could, like one of our kids could sit on. And so it was kind of cute. It was an era for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And just folks on the internet have become attached to the two of them and their rides and their very sweet interactions, and nobody's ready to let go yet.
Well, they say when you're raising kids, the days are long, and the days are long, but the years are short. And I think each phase of your kid's life sort of passes really fast.
Oh,
very cute.
Very cute. Okay. Anyway, what's your recommendation? Take two.
I recently saw a video that I don't know why it came across my YouTube feed, but it was about revisiting 1999's movie Dogma, which for people who are, from the 90s pop era, might remember Jay and Silent Bob. They had a bunch of really interesting movies, Clerks, Chasing Amy. I loved the movie Dogma. It was very anti-establishment, very much poking fun at the Catholic Church. And I was going to Catholic school at the time and feeling very anti-establishment myself. But what was fascinating is that apparently I hadn't really noticed the fact that I had not seen these movies come up on any streaming services, right? Like there's a bunch of other movies from the late 90s that have sort of, they pop up on the streaming services that they're re-releasing them. It's the 25th anniversary, blah, blah, blah. Well, so apparently part of what happened is that Harvey Weinstein owned the rights to the movie through a series of like sales that had happened and had not allowed it to be re-released, like probably hadn't thought about it because he owned a lot of films. And so it wasn't until he sold off the rights to it, probably to pay for his many legal fees for being a horrible rapist who ruined the lives of countless people in Hollywood and everywhere else. But so apparently that made it possible for it to be re-released. And so apparently late last year, it got a little reboot from Bob of Jay and Silent Bob and was re-released. And so now you can stream it. So I'll include a link to that movie about sort of why you haven't seen it around before. And you can watch the 25th anniversary preview edition that was re-released. I mean, it's like it was a real ensemble cast.
Yeah, I never saw that one. I did see a couple of the other movies related, but I never saw that one. Maybe now's the time.
I will say it does remind me, especially when we introduce our kids who are now teenagers to movies that we were really into in the 90s. I'm like, wow, there was a lot of violence in movies that we watched, which is interesting. I'm like, oh, you kind of see it differently when you're a parent, but the movie's great. I still think the jokes land. Alanis Morissette plays God. It's great.
Oh yeah, I forgot about her in that. Did you ever see the movie Untamed Heart?
Ooh, a long time ago.
It was Marissa Tomei and Christian Slater.
Yes.
I just saw like a critique of that movie. I don't know why this person was watching this movie now, but it was pretty funny because the story is like this love story, right? Like Christian Slater plays this like kind of moody guy. He doesn't talk very much, and I think she's a waitress or something. And they end up getting together. But the way that I have not watched it since whenever it first came out many years ago. And this person who's reviewing it says, why he's like stalking her. Like he shows up at her house. He's watching her while she's sleeping. He like sets up a Christmas tree there while she's sleeping one night, and she like wakes up to this Christmas tree. And all these things were framed as like very sweet.
I don't like it.
I know. Now it sounds very creepy. But at the time, I mean, it's not like one of my favorite movies or anything, but I remember like thinking, oh, that's sweet that they like got together. But the way this person was describing it, I was like, oh yeah, maybe through my like current eyes, I might see it differently.
It also sounds like one of those movies where all you have to do is change the soundtrack and then the entire thing lands differently. Yeah.
That's very possible. But he like has all these scenes that he includes, and I'm like, that does look terrible. What is happening? But I was like, I don't know, however old when it came out, like 10, 12, whatever, young.
Sure.
So I didn't pick up on any of that because we're just told, right? Like, I mean, Beauty and the Beast.
You're told this is a romance movie.
Beauty and the Beast. The guy holds her captive in this castle. And like
Stockholm Syndrome all the way.
No, we thought that was a romance. So anyway, one day maybe I'll rewatch and see what I think. But I have seen people say, by the way, that like for our generation, like all these movies that we saw really twisted our view of what romance is. Like Ariel has to give up her whole family and her voice.
When doesn't get it back at the end. Like, I'm like, wait a minute.
Some random guy? Why?
All the best parts of that movie are underwater.
Oh, absolutely. Under the sea. Anyway, so it just has made me think a lot about like what I thought romance was and how much it was informed by these like weird, in retrospect, weird relationships that were written and produced mostly by men.
Well, I mean, and also like We were just talking about, Harvey Weinstein. Like, he was the tastemaker in Hollywood when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just one of many, right?
It's just been great. Worked out really well. All right. On that note, I think that's it for this week's episode. If you didn't like what you heard, this has been The Verdict with Ted Cruz. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to The Present Illness, leave us a review, and tell other people to listen as well.
We know that you're not listening to Ted Cruz's podcast because you've gotten to the credits. We know that you like hanging out with us, so we hope that you'll follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at The Present Illness, and you can stay on top of all of our TPI-related news.
We will be back next week with more headlines, hot takes, and doom scrolling, hopefully wrapped in some laughs.
Until then, agitate, hydrate, take a nap, and we'll see you next time on The Present Illness. Production by Arghavan, Salles, and Alyssa Burgart. Editing by Alyssa Burgart. Social media by Arghavan, Salles. Original music by Joseph Uphoff. Don't take medical advice from random people on a podcast. This show's for informational purposes. It's meant to be fun, and it is certainly not medical advice. Please take your medical questions to a qualified professional. This is our hobby. It doesn't represent anyone's opinions but our own.